had a long day. I'm excited about this is the last session, and so if you are a few people have. If you're a little like you've been sitting there, you're getting sleepy, if you want to stand and watch from the back, that's totally fine. Um, but yeah, Latin mission.
Cool. Um, yeah, I want to say like it's been so cool coming right now and being able to speak kind of at the end because I feel like so many things that I want to talk about are built on the foundation of where we've been talking in terms of identity. Because really, we never can do mission without first being filled by the love of the Father, Christ, having that identity in Christ, and then going out from there. And so, as much as you guys might imagine, like, oh, now I'm talking about mission, now I'm talking about what we do, um, I don't think that we can really do without believing. We're never going to do something that we don't believe in. And in today's culture, in this part of the world, we're facing religious pluralism and the fact that Christianity is one among many religions, and religious pluralism teaching that Christianity is a way to the divine and not necessarily the way to the divine. And that's frustrating for, I think, all of us, or it should be frustrating to all of us in the sense that we do believe that Jesus is the way, the truth, the life. No one comes to the Father except through him. But unless you believe that, you're never going to do mission. Why would you ever do mission if you don't truly believe that? Because if they're just on their own journey to heaven, they're on their own journey to the divine or to truth, what's the point? Like, just let them do what they are doing. So I think I really want to challenge you that mission comes down to belief, and that our shortcomings in mission are belief issues, they're heart issues, and that where are we not believing truth, and that's not then being lived out in our life. Any of us Latin? Did anyone take Latin? Couple. So what's the translation? Right? Mission of God or God's mission. Um, and something that is kind of hard for us today in evangelical Protestant Christianity is mission is an ambiguous term. Like, what really is mission? And that's been defined and used in so many different contexts and so many different ways that it's hard to say, like, what is missions? So, like, when a lot of people refer to mission, they're talking about a 2-week trip to a third world country, or they might be talking about a missionary who has a mission and it's in a cross-cultural context. Some people, when they talk about mission, they might be talking about, well, it's not, they'll be like, well, it's not just cross-cultural, but it's a service project, in their own community. Um, and the thing that I really want to advocate, or the thesis of what I'm trying to say, is that, like, shared mission in community is the mission that I'm talking about, and sharing our life with those who don't yet know Christ, sharing our life or pouring out our life as we're being filled up by Christ on behalf of the poor, the oppressed, those in need, as so many of the prophets talk about that advocate for mission. And what's so hard about this ambiguous term is we can be talking about mission, and we can use the same word, mission, and mean many different things. But I think we need to begin talking or speaking to a different reality. When Haley and I and my wife, Jackie, were living in Burundi, we often had people that came over for a week, and they're like, we're on mission. And like, I don't want to talk too poorly about like really short-term stuff because I believe that they can be done really well. But oftentimes, what it looked like was someone from Haley's Youth for Christ, like one of the locals, whitewashing one of their walls, painting it white. Team comes in, like, oh, we're ready to do a mission, like, oh, selfie with the kids, like, go, like, paint a picture on the wall, do a little tour around the country, go home. After they leave, they go out, whitewash the wall. Next team would come in, like, do the same thing, like, oh, selfie with a kid, like, paint the wall. And like, is that mission? Like, is that really mission? Or is the value more in some of those types of experiences more about discipleship, like living life together with that team, like some of those things coming out? And I think that it's probably more the latter than the former. So one thing that I want to say is I truly believe that God has modeled mission from the beginning, that it's not something that we've just created, and I think it's something that's foundational truth. Uh, when I look to Genesis chapter 3, what happens? Right? The fall. But in the initial promise of God, he's promising a savior. Like, the man will come from the woman, he will crush the head of the serpent. So instantly, like, God is on mission towards humanity. In the Abrahamic covenant, we see God on mission again, and he's advocating Abraham. Like, he's just speaking to his identity, really. Like, you will be a blessing. Your family will be a blessing to the nations. We see it again with Moses, as we were talking about just after in Exodus 34. We see this dialogue in 19 through 31 through 34 about God's desire at that time of the Israelites was to be a kingdom of priests to the nations. And I just love God's heart in that. And that didn't happen, right? Like, as we know, like, they did not become a kingdom of priests. Moses ended up being that priest and then the lineage, but God's heart was for the state and the people of Israel to be priests to the rest of the world at that time. And how beautiful that would have been if the people of God would have actually lived that out. And I see this continue through the prophets. With Jonah, I mean, we know the story so well, but sometimes we miss out on some of the gravity of Jonah going to Nineveh. And at that time, Nineveh was the capital of the pagan world. I mean, that would be like, hey, like, go to Saudi Arabia and stand and preach the gospel. Like, that's kind of the equivalent of what God was asking Jonah to do. We kind of can have a little bit more sympathy for him and like, no, I'm getting on a boat. Like, I'm out of here. Because what are the implications of us doing that at this time? I think there probably would have been similar expectations that Jonah had in his heart, like, oh, what am I going to do? Like, that's crazy. That's crazy. But God asks us to do those things. As crazy as Hosea's love, God calling Hosea to love a prostitute. But my point is, I see God in the Old Testament from the beginning advocating mission, him showing us mission and telling us to live out mission. And I see the greatest example of that in Jesus, that Jesus went in so many ways, like, and modeled mission to us, like what that looks like. And he had every reason to have pride, but he came with such humility. And that's so humbling, taking on just a heart of a servant, kind of incarnated from privilege to poverty. Um, there's a lot of parts of what Jesus, the way he came, that seem counterintuitive to proper mission. And, as someone studying like mission strategy and everything, the way Jesus came seems like the opposite of how we might send someone out, or how like a typical mission sending agency might send someone. Um, but he did. I mean, he left beautiful harmony to come to dysfunction, and he was willing to do it. And at the end, we've been talking a little bit about Matthew 28. We have a responsibility for mission, for evangelism. And as Chris said, no one escapes that call. No one is who calls himself a Christian can say like, oh well, someone else is gifted as the missionary, or someone else is really gifted as the evangelist. And I think, yeah, there's probably people that are more passionate or more gifted, but no one escapes that. And I guess what's humbling about someone advocating that position, that, well, some are gifted, or even saying like, no, I don't think that we should be doing evangelism or mission, is that we wouldn't be here if it wasn't for that model of mission continuing through the church. It just simply wouldn't have happened. In the early church, we see some amazing examples of mission and evangelism, witness of Paul, uh, even making the most of seemingly crazy opportunities when he's shipwrecked on this island for a small amount of time, and instantly he's sharing Christ in those opportunities. I see Lydia as an amazing example and a teaching moment for mission, in that we don't have to be super well versed on Scripture. We don't have to know everything. We don't have to be well trained. Lydia, interestingly, as soon as she hears Paul, she connects them with her family, her network, really. And what I find beautiful about that is she recognized the importance of the gospel and is like, I don't know necessarily like how to tell my family. Let me just connect you to people that do. And I think that should change, as we kind of work our way around the circle, we're discipled. We should and we ought to get to a place where we're not 18 years old sucking our thumb, as others have said, but we should be moving to that place. But Lydia, in such a beautiful way, like, hey, like, I know these guys, Paul, Barnabas, who do know the gospel, and let me connect these others. So for those of us, maybe we've heard it in our community, or maybe even for ourselves, like, oh, I feel inadequate in this area of mission or in evangelism. Um, but we do know people who are competent, and I think that we can be those connectors sometimes when we are consciously incompetent in some areas. So as we start talking about community as being a tool for discipleship. So we've said something to the effect of like community. I'm amazing at this. Is the maybe the primary vehicle for discipleship. I want to say that that is true, but I find community to be a primary vehicle for mission as well. Um, and some have even gone as far as to say it's not. We shouldn't even just call it community. We should call it missional community, seeing that mission is part of living life together. And one of the reasons I say that is, yes, community is the primary vehicle for discipleship, or a vehicle for discipleship. Um, but have we made disciples if they are not engaged in mission? Like, is someone a disciple if they don't love like the lost or care about those who are poor, the oppressed? Uh, no, we haven't. Like the process isn't done. Um, so as we talk about community being a vehicle for discipleship, community inherent in a disciple is one who is engaged in evangelism and mission. Um, so we need to make sure like that is part of it. And another thing about shared mission or mission in community is that one-on-one relationships, especially missional, so reaching out to someone who maybe is hurting, broken, doesn't yet know Jesus, that's probably a step, right? So like maybe we meet someone at work or we meet someone at the grocery store, and there's like that one-on-one connection. But that happening over a long period of time, that one-on-one talking, like maybe they even come to know Christ through that one-on-one relationship, um, come to be a part of our community or whatever that looks like. But we remain that like sole person that they go to. Like that's not healthy. Like that leads to codependency on both parties. And Dave kind of touched on that a little bit. But when we share the mission, like when we are reaching out to someone, and maybe practically that looks like, hey, I've got this guy from work coming over for dinner, like calling a few people from your community and saying like, let's all have dinner together. Like, let me connect you to this person as well and bring others into that relationship. Thank you. And that keeps it from becoming a codependent relationship where the only person that person knows is the other. Um, and another thing is valuing the whole body. And as we were talking about gifts, and each person kind of being this kind of uniquely gifted part of the body of Christ, we need to recognize that what someone else is going to do, or the way that they're going to speak, or the way they're going to present the gospel to someone that we're reaching out to might be different. Like they might be preaching a really the same message, but use a different vernacular. They're going to say it in a different way, or they're going to model it in their life differently than we are, and recognizing that that is important. Like that actually may show Christ to someone else in a way that we never can. And so recognizing the value of the whole church coming together around others. Uh, Now, I recognize that I kind of have that like missionary heart, and my tendency is different than others' tendencies. But my tendency is to structure community. So if I'm leading a community, it's going to be leaning on the side of missional. It's going to be, you know, where are we going? Who are we reaching? What's the demographic or the geographic location that we're in? And that can have its benefits and its shortcomings. So having shared leadership in community is so important, recognizing that I'm probably going to turn people out. Like, oh, you don't want to be part of mission? Don't care. Like I've got stuff to do. Like there's a task at hand, and this is what we're doing. And if you don't want to be part of that, like, sorry. And that's my tendency. That's something that I have to be aware of, and bring shepherds, teachers around me to slow me down and to be pastoring and shepherding the people that God has already brought into that family. Because if we're only on the side of mission and we're never focusing on one another or that inward focus, what is the family that we're calling non-believers or those who don't yet know Jesus into? Like, are we calling them into a dysfunctional family that they don't even want to be part of? Maybe we don't even want to be part of it. Like, do we honestly like rejoice, or like do we really find value in coming together with our community? Or is it like, well, I don't know. Like the people that we're reaching out to, like, is our community a group of people that we really want to bring those who don't know Christ into? And I recognize that tendency in myself was like, I really need to recognize the value of that, the family, and not calling people into dysfunction, but to function. So one of the first steps of mission, this might sound funny, is showing up, is being there. Like, it's one thing to recognize different people, but as we start talking about maybe practical details of mission, it's like, are we giving like our resources or our time, especially? One of the greatest resources in our culture is time. Um, are we putting ourselves in places where those who don't know Christ, those who are hurting and broken, are at? I mean, sometimes it can be our own tendency to, like, we have like a service on Sunday, we have like the time that we get together with our community group for like the shared meal, shared time together. Like we go to groups or we're on a committee. Like our schedule starts getting fuller and fuller with these like meetings of other believers. And when is the time that we're actually engaging in those who don't yet know Christ? So I think it's a conscious choice to make time to do that, to engage in those relationships. And I think that part of it is bringing some of those things together. So the time that we are spending with those who are part of our community, we are gathering with, or in places that we might meet, those who don't yet know Christ. So I want to say one of the first things is showing up, just being there. And that doesn't say that we just show up at a bar or show up wherever and then live in such a way that doesn't actually show Christ or have no gospel intentionality in those relationships or in those moments of conversation with those that are there, because we do need the latter, but we can't have the latter unless we are there, and we have to give time to those moments. So I guess part of what I'm talking about is probably different than the way that we've thought about it before. Um, and I'm advocating for shared mission with our community, bringing others around us when we're reaching out, or even being willing to be open about the time that we're gathered together to non-believers coming in and engaging in that relationship with us. And I think that part of, as we're talking about community, is like, how do we have the time to do that? Like, how in 2 hours am I going to do all that we've been talking about in the last 20 hours? Like, how am I going to be engaged in mission? Like, how are we supposed to show up at some place? Like, how are we supposed to be sharing mission with those who don't believe and also have like intimacy and also like do all these different things, like be working through these different scriptures? And if you're asking like that question of like, how am I supposed to get all this done in 2 hour meeting once a week? You're thinking of a different reality than what I'm talking about. It's never going to happen. Until you recognize community as a group of people and not as a meeting time, like we're still going to be talking about two different things. In the same way that we can be talking about mission in a 1 week trip to another country, or this shared mission that I'm advocating, like we're talking about two different realities. And I really think that part of the foundation of mission in community is seeing community as people and not as 2 hour thing that we do once a week. That's a huge step. And that's something that I wrestle through, and I'm sure that we all wrestle through, is like we have so many networks of people, like if we're well connected in the community, then it's hard to do that. It's hard to make time for these different things, but I really believe that God desires us to be on mission. We wouldn't be here today without those who came before us who were willing to spend their life on behalf of those who didn't yet know Christ. In my own life, it's crucially important. Like I look back in my family history, and I don't see any believers. Like maybe a couple here and there, and maybe some that I don't know about. But it was someone willing to speak to me about Christ, even though I didn't know him before that. And the last thing I want to say is incorporate mission into your community. As I said, some are unwilling to even call it community for the sake of not wanting their church to miss out on this is missional community. And discipleship, that process isn't finished until it's someone that loves those who don't yet know Christ, are an advocate for the poor, oppressed, the broken. Now I know we're running, Dave, I know we're running a little bit different on our schedule. Do we want to have Gary come up and do his and then do Q&A, or do you want to do a quick Q&A right now?
Because that'll give context too, so to introduce Gary. But what we thought would be helpful is just to have a chance that kind of this last little piece, and I realize that it's maybe one of the more difficult things for people because it comes with any sort of framework of whatever you've understood, like small group Bible study, like mission was not part of that. So it's sometimes the most difficult thing to wrap our heads around. I think Lad did a great job as far as kind of encapsulating that, but wanted to give maybe a short chance to ask just practical questions on like what that is and looks like. Yeah.
So when you say incorporate mission,
Yeah. It's a good question. I think that I've seen it done in a number of ways. You know, we've talked about this a little bit, but there is a time when perhaps the people that we are in community with who are believers, um, there's a time when they might not understand mission yet. They might not yet have a heart for the lost. They're still seeing that in us as leaders. Um, and so we have to model that. And so I think that that can look like us having a perhaps a geographic or an affinity group that we are especially passionate about. And do that. So it might look like that. I think that pretty quickly it probably goes away from our. Well, I go to the work in this job, and I'm really passionate about this group of people. In that learning mode, working around that working around the square. Um, but there's probably that moment where we do send out or we help them engage in whatever they become passionate about, whatever that group is. So probably yes to your dichotomy. Yes.
I just had a question. Back to when we were talking about, you were talking about community and bringing people in from people who don't know the Lord, bring them into a place of, that it shouldn't be a place of dysfunction. I was a little confused because I feel like the body right now, like we're all pretty dysfunctional, and I know my life's like a constant dysfunction, so I was confused because I feel like
I would say it's a recognition, so we can all be, you can have a bunch of broken people in a family, but the family is still operating. The family still exists. So despite the fact that, I'll use our community as an example. You guys can maybe pick up some Tesla's on. I'll be the first one to say, I got issue. You guys probably right? But I would say our community, I would feel fine about bringing people in because I genuinely it's not like it's a group of people being awkward around one another, coming out of obligation, like I have to come here. I mean, it's a family. It's people that I healthy in the sense that we love one another, we value one another, we generally feel that we belong to one another, being part of the body. Does that make sense? It's healthy in that way, despite the fact that individually we're like works in progress. Everyone.
I guess what I was saying is I don't think we should put up a front like we are like perfectly functional as a church because this is impractical. And it's not saying that you were saying that at all. Just yes, inviting them into what you can, how you can change, and how you can be made new. But we're all how we struggle together. I think that when I became a believer, it's really comforting knowing that every Christian is the same as I am.
Yeah.
Which I think you'd probably agree. Absolutely.
Yeah. Can I just speak to that for a second before we take Tom's? So speaking to like dysfunction, I completely agree that we are all continually being transformed and made new. But at the same time, we see certain guidelines for like a elder or certain guidelines for a deacon that we ought to be living up to as leaders. And if that's the type of dysfunction that I'm probably talking more about, is like if you have leaders who are not living out biblical qualifications for leadership, I would call that dysfunction. Obviously there's other areas of dysfunction, and in our community, if we are reaching out to those and bringing them into that family, then obviously we're engaging people who are at a dysfunctional part in their life, and that's okay. We can say like, yeah, right, we're all in that. Um, had a really interesting conversation recently with a couple we were challenging it with a mission, and they were like, well, if we start hanging out with these people and kind of doing what you're talking about, what will our kids think if they see us with those otherizing, so those people? Uh, and it was like really heartbreaking. Like, well, they'd probably think you're living out what Jesus told you to do. Like, I mean, I don't know, it's a hard answer for me, but yeah, we're totally around dysfunction. We're in relationship with people who are in dysfunction. We are ourselves like continually transformed not to recognize sin in our own life. But I still think that as leaders, we're called to certain things that when those are out of balance, there's a level of dysfunction that we should take care of.
Well, I was gonna throw something up. So, can I give a couple examples real quick of what that? And some of them are shared ones from us, but because that'll kind of lead to why Gary, what he's going to share. So, in leading these communities like this over the last 5 or 6 years, practically, one of the things that I have tried to do with our and I go a couple times, and so rather than just me going there and telling them about it, I've attempted to bring people from our community in. That one's a little more difficult. There's actually steps you got to go through to do it. It's not just like a really easy one-off, but nonetheless, that's me saying. If you look at this, that's me saying, "Come with me while I do this." Not just me telling you about how I'm doing this, but I want you to see, and I want you to be part of. So anytime I'll bring anyone in with me, I'll say, "Hey, share your story." And also gives me a chance to hear them share their testimony, hear them share their story, which then leads to further conversations I never would have had with them as far as drawing out, helping them see like where God, when Chris was running through the whole like the creation, fall, redemption, restoration, like hearing that, and you can do that sometimes people in the communities with their testimonies, and that's a great thing. But that just gave me another opportunity for that. So like that's one example of where it's happened. Another example, and this was some years ago, was one of the people from our community was connected, met up with a lady that was a single mom, and started building a relationship. And one of the things, being a single mom, running around doing a lot of different stuff, and so the idea came up of what's a way that we could bless? What's a way that we could love the single mom? You know what? Like cooking meals is a tax. So what they did was a bunch of the girls got together and started cooking meals once a week for this mom. And it started with just one person at the relationship, but before long, now, does that make sense? Now it's beginning to have others are being brought into the process. And as my wife, one of the ladies started with one single mom, and then it became two single moms because someone else knew a single mom, and then it became a third one. But then one of the other things that did was that suddenly created a different time where now my wife, Lad's wife, Haley was, I think, part of that at some point. Or was this pre? Okay. There was a couple other dating times.
Yeah.
But there was other ladies where now, speaking of making disciples, they're coming together for a purpose. They're sharing, they're talking, and then they're together going and caring for and ministering to these moms. And so that's another example of what it means when we talk about shared mission. It's not always an organization thing where it's like we're going to go serve at this organization. In that case, it was a specific lady. Or right now, and this one she lives a little further away, but Gary's wife Ashley had been sharing about her friend, and we've been praying for her that her friend is pregnant. Dad, she was moving. She was living down in Walla Walla, and then she was moving up. And so we've been praying for her as she moved up and everybody got a kid. We've been asking, how can we lead her with Christ? Kid came and we're like, hey, can we help her with? She's a single mom. Let's help her with meals. And so everyone signed up. People did meals, and then she was able to bring over and say, hey, I need some meals. And it's like, where do these meals come from? Oh, it's everyone like from our, I don't know how she would have phrased it, from our church, from our community, from Jesus people, whatever. I call them my Jesus people when I'm usually talking to someone. So that got to be part of that. Or we had another guy that had a similar situation. If you guys remember Sean Lawrence, and his Braylon's mom, as she was going through cancer, and we were praying for her. There was a scenario that came up where she ended up in a situation with her power bill. And so that came to the table, and we said, let's do it. Like, we got to do something to love. And that's part of us together. So now when Sean goes and says, hey, even though he's like, they're not together, and it's one of those, they've never been together, but from years past, but as he continues to have a relationship with her, and then just, she has this need, and he's like, here, covered. She's like, what? You don't have to. He's like, it was me and it wasn't just me. It was this whole kid. And then she's like, I don't even know these people. Like, who are these people that like paid my? It was backed up. It was like $500 or $600 bill. Like, who are these people? And it's like that's some of what when we talk about shared mission. I think oftentimes people think, oh, we should go serve at a soup kitchen together. It could look like that. I'm not saying not. But I think, and it could look like us, another group of guys at one point, we all signed up to be juvenile probation mentors. We heard about a need, and so a group of guys was together. We said, let's all become juvenile probation mentors. And so we'll all have different kids, but we're together. We're encouraging one another in this. So does that make it can look a number of different ways, but it's the purpose is as we did that together, then they're able to see as I'm meeting with someone, as Lad's meeting with someone, as a couple other guys in there with meeting someone, that gave me as someone who was investing in a lot of these relationships an opportunity to encourage, to model, for them to be part of, to engage with. So these would be just kind of a couple examples of if that kind of helps, because I know a lot of times when I say it, I don't know, our minds are just conditioned to go to like, and Gary's about here to share. And I don't want the mind to be conditioned like, oh, you want us to go like serve at the soup kitchen once a week. I'm like, well, I actually would hope it'd be more relational. Because you could actually go do that and actually have zero, you could be keeping them in, like, does that make sense? That you could serve someone without letting them into your world and without getting into theirs. Now, I'm not saying serving is bad. I'm just saying you can keep people at a distance and keep them out of your life in doing that. And so, as he shares, know that the hope, and as he shares this, so he's going to share he heads up our local mission committee. And so he's going to share, here are some groups, organizations that we are supporting already, organizationally. So these are potential opportunities that like, hey, we are already
Anthem decided to break up global mission, mission into global mission, local mission, so we can have more focus on our community, our backyard, rather than just, a lot of people have the mentality, mission, I got to go outside the country to do this. But what you can do it at home in our own neighborhoods, in our own community. So the board started this year. I was asked to chair that board, and so small board right now. There's 3 members. We're looking at growing that board. Just there's so much more work to be done, and more manpower needed to be able to achieve the goals of the church. The local mission purpose that Anthem has, I'm using a projector instead of the whiteboard because you guys won't be able to read it if I use the whiteboard. But we aspire to be a body of believers who loves, serves, and invests in our local communities. And when I'm talking about local mission that the church is supporting, it's not anything that's sanctioned by Anthem. It's things outside the 4 walls of our church, going outward, just as Dave and Ladd were talking about earlier today. It's an outward focus. So, and we have the quote in our philosophy of local mission is you could do little mission without leaving the building. And we truly believe that. You've got to go outward. You have to go out into the community and be with people to be able to, reach them. So who's Anthem supporting in 2016? It's actually the groups we're supporting in 2015 as well, since the board started so late. In the year, we decided to roll the 1-year commitments into 2 years for 2016, just because we want to focus on it being more than just giving money. We don't want to be just a grant. We want Anthem to have a relationship with these local missions that we're supporting. When it comes to dollars and cents, our contributions are pennies to some of these organizations. Our grants range from $1,500 to $6,000. One of the missions that we work with, they just received a grant from Silverwood for $100,000. We give $1,500. So we feel like our church body could do so much more with our gifts, with our talents, and by serving with them. And that's one of our big focuses, is sharing this information with our community group leaders, all of you, so you could reach out and rally around these organizations that our church has found, worthy of receiving our support. And so first of all, one you probably all know about is Open Arms, the Crisis Pregnancy Center, opened in 2001. They're committed to providing a compassion, information, and to support anyone facing the challenge of unintended pregnancy. They have an office in Coeur d'Alene, but one thing that's really neat about this organization is that they have a mobile clinic. This bus goes to Rathdrum, to Kellogg, and Wallace, goes to these outlying communities to be able to serve them as well. And a lot of people think, it's an anti-abortion clinic. They don't just do that. They don't just do ultrasounds. They do the pregnancy testings. They do the ultrasounds, but they really focus on parenting, education, adoption support, community referrals, having support groups, and then sexual health. So it's more than just a place to go do a pregnancy test and get an ultrasound. They really rally around the people there. There's a picture there of the mobile unit, and then a picture on the website. I'm not sure if that is somebody that actually went through the center or not, due to confidentiality. It's a big thing with taking pictures with them, but that's what they have on their website and what they provide for pictures. But you get the picture. It's having going pro-life there. So getting involved with Open Arms. General involvement that your community group could do with them. First of all, pray. Pray for the staff, pray for the volunteers of their organization. Pray for their clients. They have a prayer email that they pass around and give you updates there. You can become a client advocate. You could be a monthly financial supporter. If you like to sew or knit, make blankets, quilts, booties, hats, nursing covers, etc. If you're a nurse, consider being trained to do pregnancy testing and possibly ultrasound testing or training. For youth organizations, for our youth groups, organize or help with a mini fundraiser like a car wash, a bake sale, a community garage sale, etc. Have a special skill or hobby, marketed donating proceeds to the Crisis Center, swim lessons, craft sales, etc. Start as Students for Life at your school and educate your peers about pro-life issues, abortion, and how articulate your pro-life belief is. Then host a baby shower at your church or school. The gifts will act as donations to help young moms get a good start with their little ones. For men, they're always looking for board members at Open Arms, and then they can also serve as mentors for the young fathers. That's another thing about Open Arms, is that they also have programs for the dads, which a lot of people don't know about. The second organization that we supported this year and upcoming for 2016 is Union Gospel Mission, the Center for Women and Children. Union Gospel Mission, it's big, it's in Spokane, but they have the Center for Women and Children here in Coeur d'Alene, which we made sure that the Anthems funds were allocated directly to go to the facility in Coeur d'Alene. It opened in September 2012. It was the first long-term residential recovery center for women and children in Kootenai County. It's based on the success of UGM Spokane and Ogden Hall, and provides a warm home-like setting to which you can explore the comforts and the issues surrounding abuse, addiction, and homelessness. And the great thing about them, it's Christ-focused. When I meet with UGM, they're very proud that gospel is their middle name, which is awesome. They really push in everything all around it. It's all about promoting healing that permeates from the body, mind, and spirit, and lives in lives that are transformed from the inside out. So this year, when I asked, the first time I went over there and met with them, I asked, what's your guys' purpose? What's the goal of UGM? And they showed me this picture of Naomi. This was Naomi who started their program. See there, that's somebody that's hurt. She was abused. She was an addict. Went through a lot of issues. She was a single mother. That's when she started the program, went through, succeeded, finished the program at UGM, and that's her now. The little girl, the brunette, was her daughter that was at the Ogden Hall with her in Spokane. She's been married. She married a pastor, actually. Got married. That's their daughter there, the little blonde. So that's what they go to change lives, going from somebody that's just hurt and broken on the inside to somebody that's actually truly happy now with Christ in their life. Other things, there's a picture of the center here in Coeur d'Alene, and then a couple quotes. The one to the right, the face of homelessness is different than it used to be. They have a big timeline in their cafeteria, and starts from the 1970s. And, you've got the typical drunk guy, homeless man on the street. That was the face of homelessness back then, the addict. But then now you've got single mothers who just can't support themselves, and they just need help. That face has changed, and they've realized that, and just really want society to know that people aren't homeless because directly, that they're making all bad choices. It's the issues surrounding in their lives, abuse, etc., that causes it. And a quote directly from one of the residents, it's an opportunity to get whole and have hope again. So, they're really focusing on spreading the gospel. And the ways that you could get involved with UGM is prayer. Prayer for everyone they serve, that they can come to the Lord, and for the staff and ministry partners to connect with their faithfulness of the Lord and help the participants see themselves as the Lord sees them, not how society sees them. They also, give them financial, but visiting them. They love visitors. They want you to visit their shelters firsthand. One thing I thought was awesome going through that they love at the Center for Women and Children is they call them prayer warriors. Community groups come to Center for Women and Children, come in smaller group settings. They say they like around 8 people or so, and they just go from room to room and pray for that room. You don't necessarily know who's in there, who stays there, but just go around their facility and pray. They like when people could come and serve a meal and have a meal with the people. Don't just serve them. After you're done serving, sit down, talk to the participants, get to know them. You could teach a class. They're always looking for more and more classes for people to teach. A big thing, they want to help these women expand their education. So if you're a retired teacher, you could do like a math course, reading. You could go in there and tutor. The class that Cameron and I have talked about, we work together. We're labor contractors, and we want to be able to go in and do resume workshops, interviewing skills workshops, to be able to help these people get a job, because that's a pivotal part of the recovery program. They've got a lot of men there who have well, I've got a knack for woodworking. Can I teach a woodworking class? Some of the women love it, but who particularly love it is those 10 to 12-year-old boys that are there with their moms. So it's really impacting their lives as well. There's a women's auxiliary, which is quarterly. If you want the schedule, reach out to me I could get you that. But it's quarterly, where you could go to the Center for Women and Children, and it's for the women to get together with other women from different churches and just really have a time of fellowship. It's a really cool thing. You can mentor. Husband and wives are great for this, to be able to mentor. You start mentoring when they're in their final quarter of the program, and then you mentor them once they get out. It's really showing them how to have a healthy relationship, how to live a Christ-like life outside of the shelter, outside of the program. Other opportunities that they reach out for churches to do is they have a chapel, and they actually let a church take over and emulate your service there. So if our church really wanted to rally around that, that's an opportunity we can. We can have one of our pastors go and do the sermon. We can have one of our worship teams go and lead worship. So they really encourage it. It's a rotation where they have a bunch of different churches from the community do that. So it's different ways for us to visit and really have Anthem be seen in the Center for Women and Children. And then they always accept donations: food, clothing, household items. They've got a car lot in Spokane for cars and other vehicles. So they take all sorts of different donations for their thrift stores and for their shops that they have. The women earn Union Gospel bucks, and whenever they do chores, and then they could go into the store and buy their kids a toy or buy a new jacket, or if they're getting ready to move out, they could buy furniture. They could buy different things with this money that they earned for doing things around the house. And then top needs they have on their website currently and sharing with us. Winter months, of course, socks, hats, coats, pajamas, robes. Food, dinner napkins is one of them, specifically for the Center for Women and Children. Laundry baskets, standard pillows, Ninja blenders, gallon storage bags, mini cupcake tins, and baby wipes. Next organization that we're supporting is For the Kingdom. Shane's organization, founded between 2009 and 2010 is when he first started getting going with that. The hopes was to be the vein for connecting people to God through discipleship. He focuses on high school age young people and teaches them the truth found in Christ. He accomplishes this through personal relationships, evangelism, and other family supporting activities. I had the privilege to go into his group this past Thursday night, and it's just amazing seeing a group of high school age kids, some that know the Lord, some that don't, getting together. And I've never seen a group of teenagers get along so well and treat each other so kindly, and just a positive atmosphere. Everybody has a smile on their face. Nobody was down. Everybody, kind of left their struggles at the door almost, it seemed like. And just, it's a place where they felt comfortable, and a place they felt loved. And it's just really impactful on what Shane and Laura do. It's that mission of reaching the unreached in a public school setting. That's where Shane's finding these students. It's these students that aren't necessarily youth group kids. It's kids, a lot of kids, like I said, they don't know the Lord, but Shane gives them a comfortable place to come to, and he gets a lot of people that end up becoming into his mentor group that really learn to love the Lord and come to Jesus. It's just really impactful the way that For the Kingdom works in this youth's life. Pictures of things that they've done. Back in October, they did pumpkin carving. Pictures with the wedding dress. It's first generation For the Kingdom gal who got married recently. Guy in the top corner was another first generation guy starting his own family. Picture from a skiing trip last winter. And then a collage of just the different fun activities they do, such as bowling and just camping, outreach, different fellowship events. So getting involved with For the Kingdom. Of course, prayer. Pray for the students involved in their relationships with Jesus to that they would grow. Pray for the students who don't know Jesus. Pray they wouldn't be drawn in and ask him into their hearts. Always financial giving, and then resources, meals. Food. He's feeding these teenagers weekly. So if people want to do like a meal train, be able to make a big pot of soup, make a lasagna, casserole, bring it to them. They love ice cream. They love pop. I've never seen so much pop get drank in an hour and a half. So it's, different things, meals and snacks and drinks to bring to the kids is great. Venues. If you've got a field where you can do a bonfire and be able to have invite their group over to your place. They love to be able to do that, find different outreaches, different venues to go to for their fellowship. And entertainment passes. Shane takes the kids bowling a lot. If you could get bowling passes, Croc Center passes. These kids like to work out. A couple guys were trying to emulate a stamp on their hand so they could both go after worship, after the night. Different things for the kids to go do together as a group is just, really cool ways for you guys to get involved. Then the final organization that we're supporting is Children's Village. It was founded in 1990. Its mission is to provide a safe haven and restore hope for children who have been abused, neglected, and are in severe family crisis. It's essentially a long-term foster care orphanage home here in Coeur d'Alene. Of the 2,100 children served since 1990, half are children who have been removed from their home by the state, primarily due to abuse or neglect. The thing about Children's Village, it's unfortunately not a Christian-based organization because they get state funding, so they can't be, but it is a Christian ran. Every staff member is a Christian. They have worked through it with the light of Christ each and every day. And on Sundays they go and ask the kids, okay, I'm going to church. Does anybody want to come with me? Or they'll ask a kid who's recently in there, did you and your family used to go to church? What church was it? I'll take you there. And so they could go and so they could still live their normal lifestyle as well. And, their care extends beyond shelter, food, and basic needs. They provide the children with everything they need to feel safe and loved, to be healthy, and ultimately to heal. Pictures from Children's Village. They throw birthday parties for the kids. That's their dining hall. It was the kid's third birthday. The volunteers come, playing basketball with the kids. It's a picture in the top right-hand corner just from this week on their Instagram page. They put the Christmas tree up. Christmas time is a very special time at Children's Village. One year they had 3 Santa Clauses show up all on the same night. So it's a very special place for the kids during the holiday season. They just really make it feel real homely, and they dress the house up, decorate it, make it a little winter wonderland for them. They've got nice playgrounds for the kids, and that's one of their homes right there. They have 2 houses currently, and they both are the same floor plan, kind of breaking the kids up by age. And their actually long-term goal is to build a 3rd house. They do have the property for it on their campus, but just waiting to get the right funding to be able to build it and then successfully run it. So prayer, getting involved with Children's Village, prayer for the children in the program, their families, financial supporters, and employees and volunteers who spend countless hours with the children. Volunteer opportunities for community groups and people, spending time with the kids, assisting with events and fundraisers, outside maintenance on their campus. But, like the Juvenile Detention Center that Dave was talking about, they do run a pretty extensive background check and training that has to be done before you could volunteer. They make you go through some classes just to make sure that you're going to be there to be able to take care of the children. That kind of covers the organizations that we're supporting, but other things that the community groups can do. If you know of any other groups that you want to get involved with, or that you feel the church should be involved with, please let us know. You could reach out to myself. Buddy Holton's our pastor that oversees the board, and then it's myself and Gary and Jan McSweeney. So if you know of any of us, let us know, and we could be able to get a chance to talk to that mission and look at them for funding in 2017. We'll be accepting applications in starting the summer, looking at for 2017. Following that, if your organization feels led, and to start something up but need some seed money, talk to us as well. We're hoping to be able to help, be able to help some of the community groups and people from our church get something started. We're still waiting for the final budget numbers from the stewards for the year, but it's on everybody's heart on the board to be able to really help start something up and make sure, turn your idea into a mission. We'll be able to work with you and be able to put stuff together. And, these organizations, prayer is big. And then just like Lad said earlier, just getting out there and starting and doing it. So that concludes my portion. If anybody has any questions.
Let's do this. If you have questions, because I know I had said I want to get you guys out of here.
Yep.
Or at least wrap up officially. So, I'm supposed to take this. Yeah. So, again, all that last part, we could have a lot longer in depth. I know it's kind of here at the tail end and all that. I think there's some significance to that. I can tell you down the road, their heart is that what they do locally in terms of what they support and local mission would be a reflection of what our communities are engaged in. So as much as right now it's like presenting this as options, ultimately where they'd like to go is when someone says, well, what is your church involved in locally? It's what you're involved in locally. Does that make sense? Because you're the body. So if someone said, are you involved? Well, if there was a community that was wrapping their arms around in open arms or doing something else, whatever, then that's what we're involved in. So that's kind of the heartbeat behind that. That's where they want to end up with it. Just a couple last things. I really hope, I just want you to know how much we love you, how much I love you guys, and just, again, appreciate you being here, spending the time this weekend, these last 20 hours. I really hope you go home with just an encouragement, kind of fresh wind in the sails. And even if that means I got to go home and get with my dad, similar to a thing, I got to go be with the Father. But all of that is going to impact, right? What's going on in us directly impacts those that God has brought into your midst, the communities you lead. And so that's why it's critical that so goes us, so goes those we lead, that God really works for that in the role you're in. And I'm not saying, ultimately we want to move to where it's not so, but I realize a lot of it, the body is a reflection of those leading it in terms of kind of focus, health, and that. And so with that, one of the things that, and I don't know that I ever mentioned this, I mentioned a few of you, but like I said, I want to equip you as best as possible in everything we do. That was why the whiteboards, as I talk about getting together with a couple guys or a couple girls, and that's really the going to a depth and the discipling process, that's why those Java cards were in the baskets. Because I know that as leaders of communities, you're probably doing that more and to a greater degree than maybe the rest in your community are at this point. My hope is that we'll get to the place where everyone is doing it equally. But I realize that leaders lead. And so leaders are doing it to a greater degree. So that's just us wanting to resource you to say, hey, here's $20 to just kind of a little boost along the way as you're meeting people for coffee, as you're getting together with your couple, like 3 guys, 3 girls, and you're doing that. So that's the purpose of that. That's kind of the same reason as the purpose of the whiteboards. And another way that just want to bless you, speaking of serving one another, so Haley and Chantel, they planted a middle school girls community back in September, right? Yeah, September. And my daughter's part of it, so I'm stoked on it. It's really cool. It's been awesome. It actually happens to be at our house. It's cool being the parents that are just the hosts. Like, we're just the hosts. It's great. And so they're leading that. Well, as they're working with the girls, one of the things that they've been talking about is this very stuff that we're talking about on how can we, what does it mean to like love God with all that we are? What does it mean to love one another? What does it mean to love others? And so when they talk about the family, how can we care for the family? An idea that came up was we got a bunch of middle school girls. We could probably give everyone a free date.
We can give everyone a free date day. All these people, and they were thinking of you, that are leading, involved in communities that have kids. Obviously, if you don't have kids, I guess is whatever. But for those that have kids, yeah. It's still a free date. You can come check in with them and just be like, thank you. That's great. But they've looked at next weekend because they realize like holidays, lots going on. Even if it was just practical, oh man, when are we ever going to get a time to do a little shopping or whatever? So they've set a time. They're looking at a week from Sunday, right? Campus. You could just drop your kids. You could have 3 hours, go do whatever you want. Cost you nothing because that's them with the girl. And this is part of them discipling the girls that they're working with. Speaking of shared mission, right? This is like part of their shared, this is them like, this is how we love those inside the body. And then they also have other ideas for taking those girls. And this is how we love those outside the body. Does that make sense? So I think it's really cool. I'm excited about it. And I'm excited about the chance for you guys to have a free date. So they got, and all the girls are like 6th, 7th, and 8th graders. So they would love to hold babies. They would love to play with kids and as with these two. So the biggest thing they want to know with that is whether to expect you. So they kind of have some idea of numbers and all that stuff. Oh, yeah. What's the contact number? Maybe just write it up here. Write it up here. You know what I'll do for this group leader? I generally don't, but I would be more than happy to send out a contact list with everyone. If you guys are all down with that, I'd be happy to like put that together and send it out. When I send the emails out, I usually do I do the blind carbon copy just so it's not this mega list of 2, and then if one person accidentally replies, it starts getting this crazy chain. Oh, sorry. So. So I can, what? Oh, I will, yeah. I'll be dropping all 5 bars. Our 5, they'll get our 5 for sure. Yeah, like no questions. Beyond that, couple last things. While I'm out, you know how we do the greeting once every 2 months, community's greeting? Here's a question I have, an idea. Because I always will stand at the info desk if people have questions about communities. One of the questions they ask is, who's going to do that while you're gone? And my idea was, we already have a community a week that's greeting. Could each community just pick your most social friendly person and have them be at the info desk that Sunday? So there's got to be at least one person that is welcoming and friendly. No, you're all welcoming and friendly. But you know the person that's just like very easy to talk to, easy. And I'll just provide kind of here's some info to get from them. Kind of here's kind of a stock thing. If you happen to hit it off with them, you can. I mean, I did that. I was out of town, and Carly did that, and she's like, "Is it okay if I just invite them all to ours?" I'm like, "Yeah, it's totally fine. Like they got a face, and if you want to do that, great." I'm not telling you would have to do that. I'm just saying, is that something I got a lot of nods? You guys would be cool to do, at least for the next 2 months in that time? Yeah? Perfect. Beyond that, I know I had talked about the whole website thing. That may hold off because we are rethinking the way that we integrate people into communities and with the idea that Jess asked about and all that. I shared a little bit about it. So in terms of what goes onto the website, that'll be something I'll wrap up here with Mike a little bit, and we'll talk with you guys about, because it may not look the same as where we thought we were going in terms of like how many can we get on there and how many random faces, but rather allow you to be like, hey, do you want to be on there in that context, or do we want to hold off on that and every couple months run one of these 6-week courses so that even if you were open at that point to it, you would know the person coming in understands why we exist. Does that make sense? Which puts them in a way better spot than I know some of you have expressed concern at times, or just like the tension of, man, this like totally random, no relational connection, and they don't even maybe get the DNA. Maybe that was their first week. And that can be tough as a leader, especially if that person comes in and says, well, at my old church, what we did was, or what I think we should do, and you're like, yeah, so welcome. That's cool. It's hard, right? It's hard, and I get that. And so that was one of the things we gleaned from some of these other churches, like, there's some good wisdom there. So that's just kind of update for that. Cool? Let me close in prayer, and then if you have questions, I'll stick around here for a while. So if you had specific questions on stuff, some of you were asking, you want to know more what that time will look like for Cindy and I. I'm happy to share that with you, but I told you 3:30. We're like 5 minutes past that, so I want to get you. Those that got to go, and we're probably minds are full anyway. God, thank you again so much that we can gather here. This is an incredible group. I'm so thankful for the work that you have done in each life here and the work that you are going to continue to do. Thank you for their encouragement to my wife and I, that we have a family that literally today wrapped their arms around us. And I'm so thankful for that. That's my desire, is that each one of us here would feel that, but everyone in our communities would feel that same thing. God, that our entire body would